Hey guys, how you doing? Luna here with a new video for the channel. I hope you're doing well, and I know it's been like a month since I've recorded a video for the channel, and I do have my reasons. Okay, I'm pretty sure y'all don't want to hear that, but I'm back, and that's what's important. I didn't want it to come back to the channel making one of those big 20-something minute videos I usually do when I'm ranking a discography or doing a tier list or something like that. I wanted to do something a little bit more chill, which is the reason why today I want to talk about an opinion that I see more and more lately on the internet about one of my favorite artists, which is Bob Dylan. The thing is that a lot of people seem to be under the impression that Bob Dylan doesn't really know how to sing or is really bad at the time of performing a song, and even though today that may be the case, okay, let's admit it, Bob Dylan's voice in the 90s got lost. Already in the 80s was really rough around the edges, his singing wasn't as good. It's never been good, but his performance wasn't really as good as it used to be. But in the 90s, it completely lost its way, and it's still, with a really raspy, fucked up voice, he managed to release a couple of great albums, more than three actually. Even his latest record, Rough and Rowdy Ways, it's an album that's worth listening, and if you know how to appreciate the music, you can definitely enjoy the record. So I do agree with anyone saying that today, like right now, Bob Dylan isn't really a good performer. Actually, he's fucking awful.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Brian.
No one disagrees with that fact, but a lot of people seem to be saying that the 60s Bob Dylan, the 70s Bob Dylan was also a really, really bad performer. I'm pretty sure I know the reason why. We live in a generation of Autotune where even if the artist doesn't really know how to sing that well, back in the day that didn't stop anybody. David Bowie, for example, is not one of the best vocalists ever in terms of like technical ability, but still his unperfect performance managed to summon this humanity in his voice, and this rawness that provoked or infused the songs with a lot of feeling and like created a lot of heartfelt performances. The same thing with people like Leonard Cohen, John Lennon. That, mind you, I do know that his voice could be melodic, but most of the times it was really not hitting the notes perfectly, which is the mark of a good vocalist. People are just basically used to artists singing in this perfect tunes, and hitting the notes perfectly and never going off of tune. And the first verse always sounds like the second one. It almost never changes. But Bob Dylan was different. You usually have this 10-minute, 8-minute, 7-minute long songs where every verse sounds different or he performs it in a different way, and that obviously creates a lack of symmetry in the songs that this generation is not really used to. At least from the 90s and forward, they're not used to this sort of changes in the verses of the song. It's gotten to the point where Autotune has evolved and it can be used in a really good way to add a weirdness or a dreamy quality to the track, like we see in artists like Travis Scott or La Rosalia in her latest album Motomami, in which she uses Autotune not really to correct her voice, but to sound like an alienated figure inside the album. And I think it's one of the best things of the record. It keeps it really enjoyable. But with Bob Dylan, what you're looking for is not really perfection or modification. What you're looking for is the most human performance I think I've ever heard ever in his albums, Blood on the Tracks, Blonde on Blonde, Highway 61 Revisited. These records are not albums that you go to find a melodic tune or something that's nice to the ears. Nothing too crazy either, this is not a rock and roll album. Most of the times the reason why you listen to these records is to see Bob Dylan's ability to kind of put a lot of emotion into each line. You can tell by a mile away that he's the one who wrote these songs, because he knows the line, he knows the sentence, he knows the verse, so he knows how to perform it, in which style he wants to perform it. Which is the reason why this 9-minute songs that Bob Dylan used to craft during the 60s and 70s, that even today in in Rough and Rowdy Ways, you have a 16-minute song, I think. He has this ability to keep these songs entertaining because he's a storyteller. He knows how to tell a story, and he changes. He does this little like tweaks in every single one of the verses to make sure it doesn't sound like the last one. One of my favorite tracks, for example, by Bob Dylan is Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, which is an 11-minute song. And how can you keep such a song so entertaining without doing this tempo changes, without making a different instrumental pop in the middle of the track or something like that? Well, basically by changing the way you perform the verses and the chorus, it never sounds like the last one, which is one of the best things Bob Dylan used to do. And you see the same thing in albums like Blood on the Tracks, albums like Desire. One of the best examples of how much of a great performer Bob Dylan is, it's Hurricane, for example, a track that you can tell the rage and how annoyed he is at the system and the world he lives in by having this sarcastic and almost insulting tune on his voice that reflects perfectly the ridiculousness of the scenario filled with racism and a lot of other acts of prejudice told in the song. It is true that sometimes he overdid it. For example, the way he performed in albums like Nashville Skyline, it's horrible. That nasally ass voice is fucking terrible. And some of the best tracks that he has performed, like It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, sometimes he yells a little bit too much, and I can understand why people would think that he's not a good singer, which again, he's not. But I've seen a lot of people trying to cover a Bob Dylan song and failing miserably, even though they're great singers, way better singers than Bob Dylan ever was. And so they don't manage to nail the songs because they sound good in Bob Dylan's voice. And why do they sound good in Bob Dylan's voice? Because he was an excellent performer. Also, his voice could be quite melodic as well. You only have to listen to the early 60s albums like Another Side of Bob Dylan or The Free Willing of Bob Dylan with songs like Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, for example, or Girl from the North Country. It's an excellent song, an excellent performance too, which again, like, I don't really understand why anyone would say that Bob Dylan isn't a good performer. You can definitely say he's not a good vocalist. I think that a lot of people seem to confuse being a good singer and a good vocalist, a good performer and a good vocalist. They're two different things, Most of my favorite artists are not really great performers. As again, David Bowie, you only have to listen to the Berlin trilogy or, a lot of songs from his Ziggy Stardust era, and you can tell that a lot of them are not performed in the best way. He doesn't really manage to hit a lot of these notes. It's true that some of the best bands ever do have great vocalists. For example, The Who, Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant being one of the best, Queen, Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey. You do have a lot of examples where quality meets technical ability. But that doesn't really mean that you need to have both of them to be a good artist. Leonard Cohen is a perfect example of this too. The way that he wrote the songs, not really focusing on, the tracks being too demanding of his vocal ability, but focusing instead on the beauty of the track and the poeticness of the lyrics. So basically, I do know where people that say that Bob Dylan can't sing come from, especially if you look at the live shows. He wasn't really ever want to shine when it comes to his 70s live music or something. It was always more the spectacle and everything other than his voice that mattered the most. For example, the words that he was saying. Once again, he was really good at putting lyrics that made people really thought-provoking lyrics. Very few people, especially in the 60s where music was being reborn, basically had the ability and the creativity to have a style of performance that was unique to them and everyone else was trying to copy. Even the best of the best, like John Lennon at the time, said he was deeply inspired by the way Bob Dylan performed his songs, and led to some of the best John Lennon compositions, by the way. The same thing with George Harrison, the same thing with people like Dire Straits, for example. It's just such a big landmark when it comes to performing music. He managed to show the people that you didn't really need to be a prodigy when it comes to vocals and technical ability when it comes to singing to make a good song or to make a song that was appealing to the masses. So yeah, I totally disagree with anyone who would say that Bob Dylan in his prime was a bad performer. I will say that a lot of the times where his accent, that accent he had in his earlier albums is really, really fucking annoying. I do agree with that his voice right now is not the most pleasant thing in the world, but back in the day, when he was at his best, I think that Bob Dylan was an excellent performer. And anyone saying otherwise, I think they're just not really kin to that type of music. They just don't really like it, and that's it. But saying that you don't like something, it's different than saying that you don't think something's good. Those are two completely different things, And in my opinion, this whole ordeal about Bob Dylan not being able to perform a track properly is just a lot of people being used to Autotune, fixing most of the imperfections in music nowadays. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Bob Dylan is a wonderful singer, and I think a lot of people need to go and revisit his discography to realize this for themselves. That'll be it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, go ahead and leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. Let me know if you want me to do any particular type of video. I'll be happy to fulfill your request. Honestly, I think that these videos where I just give my opinion on a topic are my favorites because they allow me to make research and see what people are saying, and then have my own thoughts on people's thoughts. And I think that if anything's interesting in this life, it's just debating about different opinions, because it really makes you feel like you are an individual, which is why I encourage you to leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about this subject. I do know a lot of people that don't really like Bob Dylan's style of singing. I know a lot of people that seem to take Bob Dylan's words and political thoughts and apply it to the music, and say, I don't agree with his political view, therefore I don't like the music, which I think is one of the most stupid things one can do when it comes to art. So I do want to know what you think about Bob Dylan as an artist, so again, go ahead and leave it down below. With that being said, once again, I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that I can see you guys soon with another video. But until then, bye.